From the Fox 10 Gulf Stream, this is Next Weather.
I had a flurry of activity in the tropics last week. This week started out kind of quiet, but that's about to change. And so I want to kind of break down what's going on out there in the tropical Atlantic, Gulf, and Caribbean Sea, areas we can typically watch for tropical activity that could ultimately have some impact on our weather. And there is a fairly disorganized but prominent tropical wave. And a lot of things in the tropical process start out as waves. Sometimes we can get a system that develops from a decaying front, but a lot of them develop from tropical waves. And we've got one crossing the Caribbean Sea. It's in the central Caribbean Sea now between Jamaica and Panama, and it is tracking to the west, and the odds of development are pretty low that forms into something at about 20%. Here's a closer look at that wave, and really not seeing any falling surface, low pressure or anything like that, but this will be something to watch when it gets here in the northwest Caribbean Sea and then into the Gulf. Maybe a brief window for some development. Model's not really jumping on board with that. Then we go out in the Atlantic, and we're looking at a development region called the Intertropical Convergence Zone, and this is a kind of area we really watch very closely in August and September. But this year's different. Water temperatures are way above normal, upper level winds are favorable, and so we may see what we call Cape Verde systems getting going in the Atlantic soon. In fact, we're watching this right here. We've got a wave that is crossing the Atlantic and heading towards the Caribbean Sea, and it has a medium chance of organizing. So the first wave I showed you, odds of development only 20%, but this one crossing the Atlantic has a 40% chance of development, and that may be underplaying it a little bit. Both the GFS model and the Euro developed this thing. So here is the futurecast, and I want to run it out through time. So there's Mobile. Here is the Gulf of Mexico. This is the Caribbean Sea, and the first wave, it doesn't look like much happens with it on the GFS. The second wave, though, right there, is a developed low pressure area by Saturday at lunchtime. That's that mid-Atlantic wave that has that medium chance of development. And we'll run this thing into Tuesday, and it looks like we've got a developed system right there north of Venezuela on Tuesday at 10 a.m. and behind it we may see another system. So they're starting to line up way ahead of schedule in the tropics. And where we are on that list of names, we've used Alberto. The next possible system would be Beryl, followed by Chris, Debbie, Ernesto, Francine, Gordon, and on down through the list. We're more likely to use a lot of the names on the list this year based on what we're seeing. Water temperatures are extraordinarily warm for late June. A lot of mid-80 water temperatures with the buoys here in the Gulf of Mexico. A lot of mid-80s with water temperatures in the Caribbean, and even the Atlantic, which usually takes a little while longer to warm up, is ahead of schedule with some low to mid-80s with those water temperatures. And in June, the areas that we normally see tropical storm formation would be the Gulf of Mexico, the Northwest Caribbean Sea, and the Western Atlantic. These are the three areas that we normally keep an eye on, and we don't have to worry too much about systems coming off of Africa or the open waters of the Atlantic. That normally happens in late July. Here are the July development regions, a little bit more prominent in the Gulf, of course the Northwest Caribbean Sea, and also as we get out towards the Bahamas. And eventually late July, we can see systems that form out in the Atlantic, but these systems that are out there now may form here in late June or early July, so we're ahead of schedule. All right, we just took a power hit there from a thunderstorm here on Next Weather, but we're going to roll with it. Our generator is on right now, so that we just had to switch over to backup power, and we're rocking again. Local storms will be numerous over the next couple of days. If you've got beach plans tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday, we've got a low risk of rip currents at the beaches, but we do have to watch out for the showers and storms. Definitely an uptick there. We'll check out the 7-day in just a bit, but I want to tell you, checking in on the weather news nationally, severe storms and flooding in the upper Midwest are damaging homes and prompting evacuations. You may have heard about a dam failure in Minnesota, multiple rivers rising levels not seen in years, and it looks like in some areas the flooding risk is for those downstream. Here's more on that situation.
Raging floodwaters around the Rapidan Dam in southern Minnesota finally claimed this house, teetering on the edge of the Blue Earth River. Local officials say the dam, built in the early 1900s, is in danger of imminent failure.
We're seeing trees, whole trees, just flowing right down the river, which is an incredibly important reminder for folks to stay away from the water and stay safe.
Water levels on the Minnesota, Missouri, and Mississippi rivers will see their highest levels in at least a decade, say forecasters, with a number of communities already accessible by boat.
It's heartbreaking to see anything like this.
More than 20 river gauges across the upper Midwest hit major flood stage, with more rain expected in flood-soaked areas Thursday. In Iowa, the Little Sioux River has washed over small towns like Correctionville after a levee failed, forcing evacuations there and in several surrounding communities. The Clay County Sheriff's Office confirms one of the flood-related deaths happened there when a man tried to drive through rapid-moving water last Saturday.
They need to stay out of the closed roads. They need to stop moving barricades and driving around them. We put them there to keep them safe.
Minnesota's governor is telling residents Wednesday to keep their receipts to get financial aid faster as property damage continues to grow by the hour.
Until some of the water recedes, we won't have the full picture of that as well.
I'm Laura Aguirre reporting.
And locally, we expect rain chances generally 50% to 60% each day from tomorrow all the way through the middle of next week. So we'll see our own local thunderstorms as well. I'm Chief Meteorologist Jason Smith. Thanks for joining us for Next Weather.